Corporal Mutt here. I'd like to start this off by thanking God for the idea for this story and this video. If you guys have any ideas or suggestions to make my future videos better, please let me know in the comments. Also, if you stay until the end, I'll let you know the title of the next part. Thank you and enjoy. Battle of Dimensions, Part 8, Cost of Failure. We moved Riley to the COC room along with the other casualties, but I don't remember much else after that. It was all a blur. I know we cleared the facility out of the minimum number of Chinese still there, and that we came across a massive armory with more of the strange rifles, which we discovered were actually railguns, contrary to what I had initially thought. The magazines were high-powered batteries used to power the railguns. The intel guys had been right in a way, but had old and outdated information. This had indeed been an important research location, but most of the personnel had been moved to a location called Diren de Min, which translates to Enemy's Door. A strange name for a research location, but whatever. Unfortunately, we couldn't find the physical location for the facility. It wasn't in any of their paperwork or any of their systems. There was nothing. It was ironic, however, that this was one of the few pieces of information that they actually destroyed. After we completely cleared the facility, we were directed to go topside. As we came up the stairs and walked down the hallway, I saw that they had moved all the casualties to the initial opening. A group of Marines were putting them into body bags to be transported home. I walked past Riley, and I thought to myself, Roberts. I tapped the side of my glasses, and I saw the red dots disappear, confirming that they were off, and that they would not be recording. York, LJ, myself, and several other Marines exited the facility. I looked to the sky, and I saw the sun was about to set. When I looked back down, I saw my favorite person, with Staff Sergeant by one of the LAVs. I thought to myself, Roberts, this is going to hurt a lot. I yelled, Roberts! Get over here, you coward! Roberts and Staff Sergeant looked over to us. Roberts' look of sheer terror was priceless, and I thought to myself, good. Before I could even have a chance to get close, York and Jenkins grabbed me, holding me back, and I yelled, let me go! I saw Roberts smirk, which infuriated me even more. I started to break free until more ground pounders came. It took 5 Marines to hold me back. One of the ground pounders said, calm down, man, calm down. I kept fighting until Jenkins said, Mud, Riley would not have wanted you to throw away your career. I paused, and I thought, he's right. She wouldn't have, even if it was to put Roberts in his place. After she got non-wrecked, she always said, be smart and fight battles you can win. I stopped fighting and I paused, taking a deep breath. Roberts came up close to me, and it took everything I had not to lash out. He was on a millimeter thin ice, within arm's reach. I would have still loved to open a can on him. Roberts got right up in my face and said, what a waste of a junior Marine to save your life, a despicable NCO. You know she won't be there to save your life next time. York let go of me and gave Roberts a right-handed haymaker. He connected right below the eye, and he yelled, don't ever talk about a Marine like that, especially after you ran from a fight. You're no Marine, just someone playing dress up. Roberts looked up and yelled, you stupid bullet catcher. I'll make sure you truly become cannon fodder for that. I thought to myself, you are a heck of an idiot, Roberts. You're about to go 4-on-1, though I bet you couldn't even do 1v1. York surprised me when he gestured to the other 3 ground pounders to hold off, and then he knelt down next to Roberts and said, guess what? I already am. Someone has to do it, and a pogue like you sure won't. You see, when you rattle our cage, we will fight. You rattled it, and the only thing stopping them is me. So why don't you strategically retreat? Roberts replied, you will all be NJP'd for this. Roberts was lucky because Staff Sergeant came running. York looked up and said, hey, Staff Sergeant, get your fake Sergeant Mutt out of here. Staff Sergeant helped Roberts up and said, you will regret this. York shook his head and replied, No, we won't. And if you think that, why don't you go talk to Captain Moore? I'm sure he would love to hear about a cowardly sergeant that cost lives today. Staff Sergeant gave him a glare and walked off with Roberts. After they got out of earshot, I said to York, "Nice hit." York replied, "Thanks. But seriously, how is he a sergeant?" I answered, "He is a peacetime sergeant. He was knowledgeable in our old MOS and ran fast, which before was all we needed to be promoted." York shook his head and said, "Figures." Out of the corner of my eye, I saw York's sergeant walk over to us. I elbowed York in the side and nodded over to the Hispanic sergeant. York looked over and said, "Rah." The sergeant came up to us and replied, "Rah. York, good initiative trying to help that moron from falling, but bad judgment on using a closed fist. An open hand works much better to catch them." York smirked and replied, "Roger that. I'll keep that in mind for next time, Sergeant." The sergeant nodded and said, "York, take your squad up the road and join the Marines on security up there." York replied, "Roger. First squad, you heard him. Let's go." He looked back to me and said, "Mud, I'll catch up with you later." I gave him a nod. The sergeant looked to Jenkins and me and said, "The captain wants to talk to both of you in the command LAV." Jenkins and I both replied, "Right," and followed him. He led us to the LAV and gestured for us to enter the back and said, "Sir, here's 2 of the Seaburn Marines that went down in the facility, and here's the casualty list you wanted." Captain Moore said, "Thank you, Lopez." Captain Moore looked at the list and let out a sigh, shaking his head. He looked up and said to Lopez, "Go make rounds to everyone, checking on them. I know some of them have lost close friends and need that support. Also, make sure those butter bar boot tenants don't cost me any more Marines." Sergeant Lopez nodded and said, "Certainly, sir." The captain looked down at the list and looked back up to us and said, "Lance Corporal Hill is believed to have broken ribs and will just need time to heal. I am sorry for your platoon's loss of Lance Corporal Riley. I hate losing even one Marine. How long did you guys know her?" LJ looked at me and I nodded to him. He said, "I met her at the schoolhouse in Missouri, sir." Captain Moore nodded and looked at me, and I said, "Sir, our careers have been intertwined since day one at Paris Island." Captain Moore replied, "The cost of war is high. I am sorry for your loss. You know, situations like this make me think of the generals of the past, like Patton and MacArthur, that loved the glory of war and battle. They were brilliant and strategic, but had massive egos and were incredibly arrogant. How many of their troops died for their glory? I mean, look at this war. We still don't know the real reason why the Chinese attacked the Reagan battle group in the South China Sea. They say we committed sabotage and terror attacks inside of China, something that we didn't do. So now I have 16 Marines that have been killed, 10 more wounded, 4 of which probably won't make it through the night. All this for what? Glory? Power? Our politicians in China's couldn't play nice. So now we foot the bill defending our countries for their failures." I nodded and replied, "Sir, you're not wrong, but we are warriors. This is our job, our duty. We are told to go, and we go. But I agree with you. I hope this is all worth it, especially now that I've lost one of my best friends." Captain Moore nodded and said, "I was going to talk to your staff sergeant about this, but I guess you would be the most appropriate person to send. Later tonight, we'll be getting reinforcements, and that convoy will be taking the casualties and escorts back. Would you like to escort your friend home?" I was caught off guard by the question, but I didn't even need to think about it. The answer was simple. I told him, "Sir, it would be an honor." Captain Moore gave a heavy breath and said, "Good. Now to the original reason I wanted to talk to you. What did you find down there?" I answered, "The Chinese have handheld railguns, sir. We also learned that this had once been an important research location, but most of its resources were moved to an unknown location called the Ren de Men, which translates to enemy's door. Now it's mostly just a propaganda development facility and a place for a garrison." Captain Moore shook his head and said, "Figures. The only thing guaranteed with intel is inaccurate or old information. The entire mission is basically a failure then. And the cost we paid for this hasty push? What a waste. Duke, what can you tell me about the railguns? I answered, they can punch through our body armor with ease and leave a sizable impact on the concrete walls in the facility. Captain Moore nodded and asked, how many are there in the facility? 8 or 9, sir. There were 4 in the armory with their power mags, and several others used around the facility by the Chinese, I replied. Captain Moore said, okay, well, the convoy should be here in a few hours or so. Say any goodbyes you want to now, because once the casualties are loaded, the convoy is leaving. Good to go, sir, I replied, and Jenkins and I left the LAV. Once we were a few feet away from the LAV, Jenkins said, Mud, I need to talk to you. All right, lead the way, I said, gesturing off to the side. LJ led me over to the right side of the facility. Once he turned and leaned on the facility's wall, I asked, what's up? Jenkins gave a sigh and answered, it's about Riley and what she said back in the facility. About the dream she had of you dying. I am guessing this is what she talked to you about before? I asked. Jenkins nodded and answered, yes. She talked to me about the dream she had. It really unnerved her with how real it felt to her. She said it felt like she was there and that she watched you die in her arms like it was with her own eyes. How much detail did she go into about it? I asked. He replied, well, she said you, her, and other Marines were taking a defended enemy hill. Allied forces were taking heavy casualties, so air support was called in. The air support didn't get there until after the hill was already taken. Then there was a miscommunication with the air support. The airstrike hit friendly forces. Blue on blue action. You got hit and died in her arms. She also said that right before she woke up, that she felt like she was split in two, and then she was slingshotted back to her body. Sounds like a trip, I said. Jenkins replied, with most people, I would agree, but this is Riley. I said, I know. This does explain why she had been on edge from the moment she woke up from that dream. If Roberts hadn't been with us, she would still be here. Jenkins replied, true, she would still be here if it wasn't for Roberts. But if you hadn't let your ego and your attitude control your judgment, she would still be here too. All you had to do was let him be a coward and have me or Riley go. Now what is done is done. She made a choice. Heck, most of us would put our lives on the line for you. Most of us have lived to fight another day because of you. But your self-righteousness is your biggest flaw. You always try to put turd bag hires in their place. Well, guess what? It finally backfired. We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. You need to learn from it, Mud, I replied. So, I guess I should just let them get away with it then, LJ retorted. You can't fix stupid, but you can do what you have always done and be a guardian for the rest of us and protect us from their stupidity. They will get theirs eventually. You need to fight the battles you can win because we need you, not your ego. You improvise, adapt, and overcome anything and any situation, but your ego gets in the way. As we saw today, let today be a lesson for you. I glared at him, and he glared back, not backing down. I looked down at my arm, and I thought, he's right. If I hadn't gone down, things may have gone a lot differently. To challenge invites confrontation. My challenge to Roberts helped cause this situation. Though I will make him pay. Eventually. Jenkins asked, what are you thinking, Mud? Lad, you're right, I said. LJ replied, I am sorry, but that needed to be said. I replied, I know. Thank you. I held up my right hand in a fist and said, Semper Simul. LJ fist bumped it and said, always together. Well, I have to go find the rest of the platoon, I said. Jenkins replied, let's. Well, that's the end of part 8. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. The next part will be goodbyes. I'll be trying to get it out by the next Monday. God bless you. Thank you. And this is Corporal Mudd, out.